There's so many other things out there now that are really helping funeral directors for relatively low cost that help them address these challenges that they're facing on a daily basis. And so, I think the main thing is take a really honest look at your business and see, where am I struggling? Where are things not the same? Where are things going? What's my competitor doing that maybe I'm not doing? And really have an honest look at your business. I think a lot of times funeral directors sometimes don't want to answer those hard questions. I think they don't want to look at where their business is and where it needs to be going.
Welcome to the Direct Cremation Podcast with your host, Tyler Yamasaki. Hi, thank you for joining us on the Direct Cremation Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Yamasaki, CEO of Parting Pro, the #1 online arrangement platform. If you like the content, please give us a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. So today's guest has one of the most comprehensive death care perspectives that I've encountered. He started his career in death care early, as his funeral director father and his family lived in a funeral home. At 14, he then moved into groundskeeping at a local cemetery in Utah. After that, he moved into the vendor side, holding numerous roles working within funeral homes, from sales at Batesville to the vice president of Great Western Insurance Company, to then VP and CMO of Sinosource International. He's definitely learned all aspects of death care. Now he's moved back into the service side by owning funeral homes, cemeteries, and cremation businesses. Please welcome the president of the Cremation Association of North America, Robert Hunsaker.
Thanks, Tyler. It's good to be with you today.
Hey, Robert. Thank you for being here. It's really an honor to have you on. What I find really unique about your story is that you truly have done it all in death care. It's really impressive when someone grew up in the funeral home, became a funeral director, and then owner and grew in that path. But you truly went to all the ends of death care. Could you give us a little walkthrough of your life and how you got started and how it led to where you are today?
Yeah, so it is kind of a unique journey, and I can really attribute my longevity in funeral service to my father and, his passion for serving families. He was a first-generation funeral director, and the way I got into this business was kind of unique. I'll share a little personal story with you. When I was 14 years old, I just had finished the 9th grade, and I got home on a Friday afternoon, and my dad came to swung by in the hearse. He'd been on a funeral service and said to me, he says, "Hey, let's go for a ride." So we got in the car, and he drove me down to the Red Wing shoe store in our town and bought me a pair of steel-toed boots and a pair of leather gloves and told me, he says, "Get ready for Monday morning." Little did I know that what he instilled with me at that particular point was a thing that you're not going to sit home all summer long and do nothing, but we're gonna get you to work. So on Monday morning, I reported to the local cemetery there in town that my dad was affiliated with, and that's where my career started in everything from weeding to mowing lawns to changing water. And after 4 years of working in the cemetery, I could do basically all aspects of the cemetery business, from digging graves to setting markers, to do everything. And so that was the foundation of that that started my career. Of course, I went from there to working at the funeral home, doing removals and working services, doing out of town services, et cetera, for my dad when I was in high school and in college, and then of course got a degree in economics and. I was still very much interested in being a part of the funeral service. And so I was hired by Batesville at age 22 to be, I was one of the youngest sales reps that I'd ever hired, and took a sales territory in California, and really enjoyed the interaction of working with funeral homes and funeral directors and maximizing revenue through merchandising, et cetera. Spent almost 9 years at Batesville, and then had the opportunity to move back to my hometown and was hired as the vice president of sales for Great Western, and learned a whole new aspect of B2B selling and working with funeral homes on the pre-need aspect and insurance. And of course, from there, spent a short stint with SCI in their corporate development, acquiring funeral homes for a couple of years, and then spent 16 years with Ken Jong and the Sinosource team. It was a very unique situation. I was no longer with SCI, and I got a phone call from Mr. Jong, who I'd met just in passing, more socially than anything else, and saw a really unique opportunity with the products and services that he was offering, and the opportunity to develop a product line over the next 15 years, which really helped funeral directors in creating not only value for customers, but also helping in the profitability through the products that Sinosource offered. And so I was there for almost 17 years. And then my sister, Christine, she had acquired a funeral home and cemetery through the divestiture of SCI and Stewart. And I went back and partnered with her, and we ran Southern Cremations and Funerals for almost 8 years, having a very unique approach. We had a very small cemetery funeral home that we grew into a really nice business that we sold in December of 2021, which allowed me to get back to where my parents were. My parents are elderly, and I moved back to Southern Utah. Really didn't do anything for about 7 months, and then kind of got bored. And recently, I've been working with a local funeral home here in town and developing a pre-need sales team and working with local hospices groups and doing some PR for a local funeral home, as well as I'm in my 8th month as the president of Cremation Association of North America. I've been on the board of directors for 7 years now, and really wanted to fulfill the obligations I'd committed to CANA, and it's been really good. CANA is a fantastic organization and very forefront in funeral and cremation services, and it's been really good doing that. So that's kind of my life in the background in funeral service. So I think if you take the time that I started working for my dad, I think I'm in my 44th year of funeral service. So
wow, pretty impressive. So there's a lot I want to talk about there. You're kind of coming up on the last few months, or last, I guess, third of your presidency at CANA. Can you tell me what it was like being president of CANA?
Well, the nice thing about CANA is you serve on the board of directors for several years before, and a lot of organizations, and being able to do that. So I was invited by Tim Borden, who was the CANA president several years ago, to put an application in for the board once I joined Hunsaker Partners and Southern Cremations and Funerals to get on the board. And so, CANA has been evolving ever since. My first introduction to CANA was back in 1998 as a supplier with Sinosource. We joined CANA as a supplier, and so I'd been involved with CANA for a lot of years before I ever got on the board. But the thing that I can say about CANA is that there's always something new going on. The two most recent things I think with CANA that's really helped funeral directors in creating value in the businesses that they serve is one is that we have introduced our crematory operator certification program, both in French and in Spanish now, of which now is going to allow us to have more of a global presence in the things that we do. CANA is basically known for a couple of things: our statistics, obviously, and then the second thing is for the certification that we're doing. In addition to that, we've got a new natural organic reduction certification program, which has really had some quick success in the introduction of that, which we did just a month ago. And of course, 2 years ago, we introduced our certified cremation specialist program that's really helps funeral directors in maximizing the opportunity and dealing with cremation families and the important things that should be talked about and done when meeting with cremation families. So, it's that cremation consumer is a lot different than the traditional burial consumer. And so we try to focus on those things to help those individuals that invest their time and effort to become better in understanding not only the needs of the consumer, but also making sure that they're maximizing on their opportunities with those families.
Awesome. What draws you to, because you've been involved with them now for, sounds like 7 or 8 years, what draws you to get involved with CANA versus, some of the other organizations?
Well, the thing is that, there's no secret in knowing that all of the growth that's happening in deathcare now is going to cremation. We've seen all the statistics about how the death rate is going to increase to the baby boomers, et cetera. And, you can refer to the CANA statistics. But, since 2016 was the first year that cremation surpassed burial as a preferred form of disposition here in the United States. And so, from a business perspective and being in sales and all that all the time, I noticed early on that that's where the trend was going. And so we had a very cremation-oriented business at Southern Cremations and Funerals. We marketed directly to the cremation consumer. And so when I looked what aligned with our business practices and what we did as a business, CANA was by far the choice that would help enhance our business. And so as looking at CANA for their resources and what they offered, I was passionate about what they were doing. And so accept the opportunity to get involved. And that's why I'm with CANA. So.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So as someone who's seen both sides of the industry, which season of your death care career has been the most enjoyable?
Well, my background in education was in economics. I never thought I was going to be a sales guy, right? And so looking from that aspect, and I thought I always have some type of a business career someplace, but the opportunity presented itself to get involved with Batesville early on and realize that that was a real passion of what I did. And in every aspect of my career, even now as CANA president or even as a principal in a funeral home and cemetery, everything that I look at seems to be kind of sales focused, and not only sales focused from a financial aspect for a business owner, but also sales focused in providing values to those individuals that we serve every day, whether it be, from a sales side and having a funeral home as a customer or having a family that just experienced a loss and dealing with that. I think a lot of times that we don't put enough effort in understanding who our consumer is or who our customer is and understanding the things that make them tick in order to make sure that we are handling everything that they want us to handle. And so in looking at it from that aspect, if you're going to grow any business or if you're going to have high customer satisfaction, you have to, in my opinion, understand that consumer in and out. And you may not always have all the answers, but you can have, there's certain things that they communicate to you either verbally or non-verbally, or with the things that they select or what they do that really helps in developing a strategy that really provides good satisfaction for them. So
Interesting. Okay. As someone who works in funeral homes and as someone who has sold into funeral homes, what is one thing you think that vendors don't necessarily understand when trying to sell into a funeral home, or a big mistake you see them making?
I think it's relationship building more than anything else. When I see a lot of new people come in and, being on the funeral home side and talking to new vendors, et cetera, I don't care with technology as advanced as whatever, there's got to be some level of relationship building in any aspect. Even in dealing with a family that's just experienced a loss in a funeral home that you've never met before, there's got to be some type of a connection. There's got to be some type of relationship if you're going to serve that individual to the best of to your ability. And it took me a little bit to figure that out. I thought, well, if I've got the best product and I've got the best price and I've got the best distribution and I've got the best marketing support, that there should be no reason for people to not want to buy my product. But if in all the years, and I've got thousands of friends in the funeral business that are funeral homeowners and et cetera, that have been in this business. The reason why they get in this business because they've either been called to it or there was some experience mostly that caused them to get into this business. And they're relationship people. They're very seldom do you find, in my experience in dealing with somebody, especially from a funeral home owner, that's strictly dollar driven or strictly profit driven. They're very, very few and far between. Now, are there some of them out there? Yeah, I've run into some out there that they don't really care about who you are as a person or whatever. All they want is the best price and being able to do that. But those, like I say, are very few and far between. I think most people in this business from the funeral home owner side are relationship people. They like to do business with people that understand them, that take an interest in them, that want to form a relationship with them. And so from that aspect, that's something that has really helped me in being successful in my career in sales, is that understanding that relationships are still really, really important in that business.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm obviously on the vendor side of that equation. And, oftentimes, I know in my heart of hearts that my product can help your funeral home, right? I know we all feel that way. But, as you've seen sometimes, funeral home, let's say owners aren't quick to want to accept new change, take new vendors, look at stuff like that. And, what is something that you think funeral home owners can do to maybe push forward a little bit quicker without just, opening the floodgates and just saying yes to everything. But it does feel that there is a reserved feeling of like accepting new vendors or new technologies or new, trends in death care. I know CANA does a really good job of trying to blend that and bring things new. But how do you think funeral home owners can, push forward without pushing forward too fast or too quickly?
So, with the change in dynamics of funeral homes, and, you've got acquisitions, you've got, mergers, you've got all the landscape of death care has changed tremendously over the last 20 years, just as a lot of other things have done that. I think if you're a funeral home owner and you're having struggles in one particular area, whether it being dealing with cremation families and making sure that you're doing everything you need to do with them, or whether it's trying to increase the profitability of your funeral home, I think what funeral home owners need to do is they need to look at resources and educate themselves on what's available out there to be able to do that. And now this is nothing that you and I've talked about before, but your product, we use that at the funeral home now I'm affiliated with. Parting Pro has been a great resource for us in helping a lot of families that are transient, that don't live in our town, that we can send information to them in a very professional format and being able to do that. And then I figured out a way to use Parting Pro as well as a pre-need lead source. When people put information in there and they give us any bit of information, it's a great opportunity to contact somebody and get them to be your customer, your future customer. And so, just using your product, there's so many other things out there now that are really helping funeral directors for relatively low cost that help them address these challenges that they're facing on a daily basis. And so, I think the main thing is take a really honest look at your business and see, where am I struggling? Where are things not the same? Where are things going? What's my competitor doing that maybe I'm not doing? And really have an honest look at your business. I think a lot of times funeral directors sometimes don't want to answer those hard questions. I think they don't want to look at where their business is and where it needs to be going. And so I think honesty in your business and being proactive and looking at ways to address those things that have changed that are maybe causing you a little bit of heartburn or ways to do that. And then from the vendor standpoint, that's a relationship, understanding that customer. One of the things that I found out early on in dealing with funeral families is that, there's basically four parts to the arrangement, in my opinion. The arrangement is basically collecting information or vital statistics that you'll need for the death certificate, talking about any type of service or ceremony. The third thing is talking about any type of merchandise and stuff that's going to be used to facilitate that. And then, of course, everything else is logistics that go into, cemetery, military arrangements, all those type of things. And so I think that by default, most funeral homeowners will sit down and take the information for the vital statistics because it's the easiest avenue of least resistance and being able to do that. When I believe strongly, that's the worst thing you can do to begin with a family. If all you're there is to collect statistics, then it becomes a process instead of a relationship. And so a lot of things that we did to implement, and higher customer satisfaction and frankly, higher revenue sales and et cetera, was before you ever pick up that pen or pencil to start writing down, you should get to know at least 3 or 4 things about that individual that's passed from their family. They want to talk about their loved ones and they're going to do something. They're going to memorialize. They're going to do something, whether it's with you or without you. And so if you choose to get to know them a little bit, it makes it so much easier when you start talking about, well, what does a service look like for you? Or talking about merchandise or product that can really help them. At least they've known that you've taken an interest in what they're doing. Dave Harrett, who was the president of Batesville Casket at the time, when I was a young sales rep there, he had a very profound statement. And he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that's always stuck with me. It was at my very first sales meeting I went to in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I'll never forget that comment that he made in his address to us as salespeople. And that's really stuck with me. And I think that, people, they want to talk about their loved one. And your funeral director that you're dealing with, or from a supply side, they want to tell you about their business. They're passionate about what they do, or they wouldn't be where they're at. And I think too many times we tried to get to the product and service that we're offering versus getting to know them before talking about the other things that we really want to talk about. So it's a patience process. It's patience. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've definitely seen that. It's much different conversation when you know them or you've seen them multiple times or interacted with them at a CANA show or something like that. It makes a big difference. As someone who has worked in the acquisition side, I know you've kind of started, grown, and acquired your own funeral homes as well as with SCI. What are the factors that you look for when you're looking to acquire or start a business? Like, do you follow trends? Are you looking for unique opportunities in certain areas? What is your thesis around acquiring or starting a new business?
Let me just preface this a little bit. That when Southern Cremations and Funerals was acquired by my sister, I was not involved in that process of the initial acquisition. But subsequently, we did acquire another business, and we also built some funeral homes and facilities. But from the SCI side of the business is that I think the number one thing that anybody that's acquiring somebody else is that funeral home growing and thriving, and are they working towards a better business model? Or is that funeral home just basically been surviving the last few years, hasn't made investments in their business, and they're in declining? I think that's the number one thing that drives value in a business is what direction are you headed? Obviously, demographics make a difference, competition in the area. There's so many different things that do that. But when you really look at, is this business something that I want to acquire? And is this something that I think would be good for, for our business sake? I think that's the number one thing is about, is it a business that's growing and thriving, or is it a business that's declining, that's not really been taken care of the last few years? I think that's, in my opinion. Now, people that are in this acquisition business and succession planning may say something different, but we looked at opportunities to grow our business. That those were things that we really that were important to us.
I see. Well, on the opposite side, then, I know you've also been a part of, selling. How did you know that it was time to sell, or what were you seeing that made you say, okay, I think we've run our course with this brand or this funeral home?
Well, again, we were growing very rapidly, and the opportunity for us to we were not looking at the particular time of actually selling our business. There was a whole other bunch of other factors of why we were going through evaluation process, and at the particular time, and the opportunity came to us for somebody that wanted to get into this arena, into this field of business. And to be frankly honest with you, there was some, my parents' health situation factored into that. My sister and I were the only two siblings. We lived clear across the country, and their well-being was something that factored into that. Our end goal was 5 years later, is that we were looking to do something different and transitioning 5 years later, but it just worked out that it was just earlier than what we anticipated. So,
okay. As someone who's tapped in, I would say you're probably one of the most tapped into the pulse of death care right now. Even with just CANA's stats report they do every year, and being president, seeing both the vendors and owning and working with funeral homes. What are some of the trends that you find exciting in death care right now?
Cremation is still in acceleration mode right now, as far as growth is concerned. Growth is going to continue to, if you look at the trends from Canada right now, Canada is kind of in a deceleration mode, and they're kind of flattening out because they've reached the point of where things have kind of balanced out with those that are going to select cremation versus burial. Whereas in the United States, we're still accelerating. This last year in our CANA stats, we don't have any states now that are less than 30% cremation. The last one was Mississippi, and it's above 30% now, where if you go 20 years ago, we had 33 states that were below 20% cremation. And so understanding that consumer, and you look at just even physical facilities now as far as how they're addressing that need. The big, traditional funeral homes with a 200-seat chapel and those things, those are very rarely being built anymore, because that trend of the traditional funeral service, with everybody coming to the funeral service and more likely was religious based, those trends have gone away. I'm a firm believer that, in the next 20 years, we're going to see the majority of our funeral establishments are going to be more streamlined. I won't say storefront, but they're going to be more of that type of facility. And I think that you're going to continue to see as funeral home cemetery combos continue to understand this cremation consumer. I think that you're going to see, combos thrive. And I think you're going to see the small independent funeral home continue to, face challenges as far as, staying in the market share and managing those costs that go along with these larger facilities. So those are the two things that I think that I really see as far as big trends are coming. As far as disposition is concerned, natural organic reduction now is a big hot topic. More and more states are approving that process as we go along. And that's why CANA was very in the forefront of developing a certification program for NOR. In addition to that, we've got, an industry that with alkaline hydrolysis has come in, these different forms of disposition. I sometimes try to think, well, what's going to be next? And it always seems to amaze me that this consumer-driven market is continuing to surprise us all the time. And then people ask me, I get questions all the time. Well, when's cremation going to slow down, or how am I going to get the same profitability out of my cremation families as I did out of my burial families? And these are difficult questions that are sometimes not easy to answer. And it's just a transformation, and looking at what does my business look like 5, 10, or even 20 years from now? Where's this going, and how am I adapting to these trends that are happening out there that are verifiable? So, and it's all consumer driven. It's not anything that we're doing as an industry. All of these things, in my opinion, are 100% consumer driven.
Okay, well, maybe we can play a little game. If you had an unlimited budget to build a I don't even know what you would call it, end of life celebration, property, cemetery, funeral home, what do you think that would look like?
That's a very interesting question. Let me just back up here a little bit. The market is severely underserved for cremation memorialization when it comes to what consumers are looking for.
Yeah.
It's only been recently that some of the forward thinkers have been building beautiful, cremation gardens and stuff to address what these consumers need. I think NFDA just came out with a statistic that I saw recently that said 37.1% of families that choose cremation want some type of permanent memorialization, either in a cemetery or cremation garden. I don't know what the exact terms were, but that tells us right there that when a funeral home is doing cremation, 37% of those cremated remains leaving your funeral home, are they going to those places? And I don't think that they are. It's because I think that the inventory structure in just the community that I live in, we've got one cemetery here of 7. They're all city owned. We've got one cemetery that's really addressed the cremation issue fairly well. And so we've got these consumers that are wanting this, and there's a 3-year demand at the cemetery. They can't build inventory fast enough. And so I think that's, I just spoke a couple of weeks ago at the Utah Funeral Directors Convention. I think one of the things that funeral directors can do to help in increasing services and et cetera is to team up with these cemeteries, especially ones, if you got city ones in small communities, go to them and say, hey, I've got most of my families now are being cremated. I need some inventory here in your city. Go to city council meetings, go to these things and start partnering with that, because all of a sudden, if you have a permanent place for that cremated remains to go, it's going to generate merchandise sales for you, because they're going to need some type of an urn to be placed there. There's more likely going to be some type of committal at that place where they're going to do that, which can involve you in being able to do that. So I think sometimes we need to be more proactive from a funeral home owner standpoint, especially if we don't have the inventory, or we're a standalone funeral home or standalone crematory or cremation service, that we need to really be proactive on how to do that. I truly believe if I was going to do another project right now, I would find a space of land that would basically cater towards a cremation consumer. I'd never dig another scoop of dirt again. I would have everything above ground. It's easier to maintain. There's less liability. It's easier to get approved and do everything above ground, whether it be cremation. And I think there's a shortage of mausoleum property for most places too now. A lot of people have spent a lot of money in the past of building mausoleums, are sold out now. They don't want to invest the capital to do it. But I think if done correctly, you can combine those two things to make a beautiful thing. Less real estate, less cost and expense to do it. But I really believe that there needs to be relationship with our local cemeteries to make sure that the cremation consumers' needs are being met. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. I have gone to a few funerals at Rose Hills recently.
yeah.
And when you look beyond the hill, they're continually building, but they're not building like the traditional just
They're not
grass anymore. There's structures and walls and all kinds of different things that they're building. So you can tell like they're not just making plots for caskets anymore. So we like to ask this. You kind of touched on that. What do you think death care looks like in 10 years?
Well, I think it's going to continue to be consumer-driven cremation, obviously. My personal opinion about NOR and, alkaline hydrolysis, I think there's still going to be people that choose to invest in those things, will continue to market those in ways that will make them successful. I really think that the successful cremation businesses now are going to become more up to date. They're going to be more boutique type. I think they're going to be more retail looking as far as moving forward and what families want to do. That they're the people that are choosing to have their loved ones cremated or whatever now are these people that have been in a society that really looks at the way things are. What's the word I'm looking for? They really like things nice. And so I think if you walk into a funeral home and they've got orange shag carpet from 1970 and they've got 6 urns sitting behind the funeral director's desk on a glass shelf, that's not addressing and of course that's a very, very extreme situation. They're going to want things that are inviting. They're going to want things that they can relate to, that if they're going to take the memorial home, that they want things that are going to match or that's going to fit their decor. If they decide to do something, as far as permanent placement or even scattering, they're very receptive to places that are conducive to that in cemeteries, et cetera. And so I think that we're still going to be in an acceleration mode with cremation for the next 10 years. But I think that the consumer is going to be more streamlined. Technology plays a huge factor in that, as far as they can get all the information they want now online before they ever make the decision. I'm a firm believer in the educated cremation consumer. They've already made up their mind before they ever walk in your door at the funeral home. They've done their research. They kind of know what they want. Um, right, wrong, or indifferent, they've got an idea of what they want. And it's very important that, again, that relationship and understanding what those needs are ahead of time before we do anything else is really important.
Well, to expand on that, you know, I think we've kind of found ourselves in an arena where the direct cremation market is growing, or it's there with prices going lower. And, as much as I would hate to say this, but it is becoming more of like a commoditized service now, like I would say. And I know you're big on the memorialization, but do you think that the direct cremation market still grows and continues to have a huge place in the future? Or do you think that we can kind of tie that to more of the memorialization and bring it back to where the memorialization and the services post the cremation are done with the funeral director?
That's a great question. First of all, I don't think very seldom is there ever a direct cremation, in my opinion. They're going to do something, whether it's go to the park and have a barbecue and a few beers at the park after, you're going to get together on the weekend, or whether they do something at their country club or at their clubhouse or the community they lived in, or if they do have a little get together at the house, they're going to do something. I think that the term direct cremation from a commodity standpoint, from us as funeral home side, obviously is something that's a term or definition that we use. But when you really look at the whole picture, there is very, very few direct cremations where the cremation is done, the urn is picked up, it's taken home and just left there. There's very seldom. The thing that we need to figure out as a profession is that how do we become involved with those consumers, and how do we add value to them when it comes to the service aspect of it? And so I really believe, I've kind of looked at trends, in different marketplaces, and I won't give any specifics, but several years ago, there were a lot of places in major marketplaces where there was $4.95 direct cremation. They don't exist anymore, just due to the fact that inflation and everything else is like that. But there's still that place out there that caters directly to that consumer that wants just that, just the commodity, for lack of a better term. And so I think those will continue to be there. But I think us as an industry has gotten smarter about how we market to that consumer through social media, through whatever aspect you want to talk about it. We've gotten smarter about creating the discussion about one of the things that we used to talk about all the time with our cremation consumers, and we had beautiful cremation inventories. We'd always ask the question, where's that urn going to be 5, 10, or 50 years from now? And so asking that question all of a sudden puts a legacy with that individual or that family that's chosen supposedly just cremation. In our business, we were converting 30% of our direct cremation families to permanent memorialization in our cemeteries by just asking that one question. Wow. But now, obviously, if you're a standalone funeral home and you don't have that opportunity, this is where it provides an opportunity to get involved in your community to make sure that inventory is being developed for these consumers. Direct cremation is always going to be there because some people that's all that they know is that dad wanted to be cremated. But when you really get down and you start talking about the situations that deal with these families, the reason why they use that term is because they don't know anything different. And so it's our job to educate them, and educating them before the death ever occurs is more important now than ever, because they're just going to refer back to what they think they know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thinking about the future, we are starting to see a lot of companies, private equity backed or what have you, start to roll up, try to acquire funeral homes. I know that the ownership right now is, anywhere from, let's just say 75 to 85% family owned, but mm-hmm. I think that's quickly changing. Do you see that trend to continue to change? And do you think, I know you mentioned earlier that you think the family funeral homes are probably going to start having challenges that they're going to have to overcome. Do you see the trends happening where these roll-ups and acquisitions kind of start to consolidate a lot of the market?
Well, I think it's, we see that in every aspect of people that are dealing with senior population. You look at it, you look at it in hospices, you look at it in hospitals, you look at it, anything that's dealing with the aged population, consolidation, huge investments going into those things, hospitals, everything else like that is gearing towards this huge increase that we're going to have in things that people are maximizing, their resources in order to for lack of a better term, a future date of where they're going to be able to capitalize on this. And so I think that you're going to continue to see the consolidation. I think you're going to continue to see places. The thing that I really saw when I was in the acquisition mode, and this has been several years ago, is that when you get to a second or third generation that's coming into these businesses, as real estate prices get more and more expensive, et cetera, it becomes a business decision for these people to sell their businesses, because one is their profitability is not as strong as it was, due to you're not going to get the same revenue from a cremation family as you do from a burial family. You get these children that have really not had the passion to be in the business that their father or somebody else did. And all of a sudden now you start looking at it from a business decision and saying, my real estate here is worth more than this. And I've got a company that's willing to, pay me more than probably really what it's worth. It makes it a really easy decision if you don't have the passion and the desire to serve families as what the previous generation did. And so I think that just from that aspect alone, that you're going to continue to see the firm sell. And then when you look at a firm that, one of these acquisition companies that comes in and they say, well, we've got this big traditional building that's sitting here, but yet we've got 2 other funeral homes here in town that we could, consolidate this business for. Next thing you know is that building gets sold, that big traditional funeral home goes away, and they just more cater towards what the consumer is really wanting. And so that's why I think you continue to see the large traditional funeral homes become less and less as the future goes on. In addition to that, I think that the key that the local funeral director needs to understand now is that how do I be involved in that service aspect that somebody's going to have? That's really what they need to figure out how to do. So
Interesting. Do you think that's ultimately good, bad, or neutral for the consumer, for the family?
Well, you're getting into a philosophical, discussion. It's like, people are moving away from standard religious practices. People are becoming less and less affiliated with, traditional faith-based religions. And so that changes the dynamic of, when I was in the business with my dad, when I first started, we knew that if you were a Japanese family, there was going to be a, visitation the night before. We went to the church at 10 in the morning for a visitation, and afterwards, and then we went and had a cremation afterwards. And every single family was the same. The Protestant families were the same. It was a LDS family. We knew exactly what the protocol was going to be. And it's because these people were entrenched in their faith and what they were doing. But now we've got more and more of these young people that don't even associate or affiliate with the religious thing. Is that anything's game now, right? And so this is where we really, I think, as an industry, need to understand these new consumers that are selecting, cremation or funeral services for their loved ones, of understanding what they want. And sometimes it's not what we think that they want. And that makes it really difficult. So
Awesome. So why don't we talk about, you have 4 more months or so of your presidency. What are you looking forward to coming out of CANA in the next 4 months and beyond?
Well, the nice thing about it is I'll still be on the board of directors for another year after my presidency, until I'll be off the board. So, one of the things that I've been really proud of that we've done this year is, in difficult times and, businesses are down, you look at the death rate down, we've still maintained a very, very high persistency of families funeral homes and people that join CANA and stay with us. One of the things that I talked about when I in Washington, D.C. last year is that, we're the Cremation Association of North America. We really wanted to increase our presence in not only, we do a good job in Canada, but I really wanted to see us increase our businesses in Mexico specifically. And so the COCP certification in Spanish has been really good. And we've had really good response from some of the associations in Mexico that want to be more a part of what we're doing in the certification process specifically. And so I'm going to continue to work on that for the next few months. In addition to that, I've always been a firm believer in education. I've kind of challenged our leadership at CANA of what else can we educate consumers on, because I'm a firm believer in education. The CCS that came out, that was developed since I've been on the board, and doing things online to make it easier and more accessible for funeral directors to become more educated and helping them run their businesses. And so that value added aspect of it will always be something that I'm passionate about. But those are the things that we're going to continue to work on. So
awesome. And what about you personally? What are you going to do?
That's a good question. I'll be 59 next month, and I'm not ready to retire. There's some other opportunities I've got out there that are available, and obviously, I'm a family guy, and making sure my parents are taken care of, and those things are always going to be important to me. My dad's 88, and I'm always going to be involved in something. I've had a lot of people that have talked to me about doing some different things, and so time will tell. I'm still going to be there. What I'm doing, I don't know for sure what that looks like. I'm just
Awesome.
focusing on making sure CANA, with my CANA presidency stays active in what we're doing, and then we'll see what the future holds later this year or next year. So
Awesome. All right. Cool. Anything else that you wanted to talk about?
no, I think it's an exciting time for this industry. Businesses out there are going to be successful just based on of what's going to happen as far as just the number of deaths that are going to happen, and that's why you see these consolidators maximizing everything they can and putting all the cash they can towards acquiring businesses, because it's gonna be there. It's just, we need to be prepared as an industry to understand the consumer better now than ever, and be prepared to take advantage of what's coming. And I'm excited. It's, you look at a lot of other industries and stuff out there, there's just so many things to be negative about based on the economy or whatever. But death care industry is continues to be exciting to me. I think it's going to be something that there's a lot of things that are going to come that I don't even know what's coming yet, that I think are going to be exciting to do that. And I just have to say that, I've had a couple of people get into this business that came from other industries, and it's just the camaraderie we've got one with another in this business, and the way that we support each other and the way that we do that. It's just exciting. I've got so many friends in this business that I've met over the years. I truly consider them friends for the most part, and I don't have really anybody that I've ever associated with this business that I would call an enemy. And so that's just a benefit, and it's just really self satisfying to be able to call these people my friends that I deal with on a daily basis, and to meet with them and rub shoulders with them and figure out this business that we're all in. So
Definitely. I think, being me as someone who's been in the industry about now almost a decade, felt like the first 5 or so years was pretty much the same. And ever since then, it's just been a whirlwind of change, and everyone pushing forward, and things are changing at a really
but don't you think it's
quick
exciting
pace.
though?
Yeah, no, I like it. Yeah, I like it. I think it makes it more dynamic, and I think ultimately competition, innovation, all that makes it better for ultimately the family. So I personally enjoy the faster pace that things are moving now.
Well, another phrase that I heard several years ago is that, change presents a challenge, but a challenge also presents an opportunity. And so those individuals that can adapt to the change, there's always going to be an opportunity for them to be better at what they do, more successful. There's just so many upsides to what we do, and in this business, and it's fulfilling to be able to see individuals that really appreciate what you do, especially from the funeral home and funeral director side of this business, and even from the supply side. If you can come in and help a funeral home really build a better mousetrap, for lack of a better term, or do something better, it builds a bond and a relationship for a lifetime that you just appreciate. So
I find it really interesting. All right. Well, thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate having you on.
it's been great visiting with you too as well. So I just in closing, I just again appreciate this industry for what it's presented for me throughout my career, and I look forward to the next 10 years from what you said. So
or beyond.
or beyond.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Tyler Yamasaki, and this is the Direct Cremation Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you ever want to know more, please find us at directcremation.com.